There you go. Thank you. So this is the work session meeting for the City Council of Minnetrista, October 19th. It is 5 o'clock. I'm calling the meeting to order, and our first order will be to do our roll call. So I'm Lisa Whalen. I'm the mayor. I'm going to call council members first. Shannon Bruce?
Here.
John Chumperland?
Here.
Mike Molitor?
Here.
Sam Mortensen?
Here.
And then staff, we have with us this evening Mike Baroni, our city engineer.
Well, I'm not an engineer, but thanks.
I'm sorry, city administrator. I'm going to pass it.
I don't know if that's a promotion or not, so I'm here.
There you go. We have Brian Grimm, who is our finance director.
Yes, I'm here.
And Chris Lindquist, who is our city clerk.
I am here.
And Allie Paulfus, who is our director of administration.
I'm here.
All right, I think that's everybody. So our agenda this evening consists of our water budget discussion, sewer fund budget, surface stormwater fund budget, and then we will be adjourned. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian right away. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. And yeah, the one thing I'm gonna point out right away is with the 5 o'clock start time, if we happen to get done at 5:45 or 6 or something, I won't be offended or anything. So I just figured it was better to give more time than less on these topics. I didn't know if each budget fund would take 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. So just wanted to state that right off the bat, that I'm open for any questions, and obviously I'll walk through each one, but wanted to just start off with that I know some of these numbers and stuff probably isn't as exciting to everyone else as it is to me. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but we'll go from here and start with the water fund then. I guess maybe just one other comment at the beginning here. The water fund, you probably picked up from the packet, is the only fund of these three enterprise funds that is a projected rate increase being proposed, and that's been one of the items we've done the last several years is to try to do more of an incremental increase versus a big increase right when we did a lot of the infrastructure improvements for the 2 water treatment plants and the water main, and now even the water tower. So there's been a lot of obviously capital expenditures in the water fund. So that's why we've seen the need to increase that rate a little bit incrementally each year. So, but as far as the when we get to the sewer and stormwater, you'll see that those rates are being proposed to stay the same for 2021 as they were in 2020. So probably just dive into the packet materials. Everything that's we're going to talk about was included in the packet, so I don't think there'll be anything else that we'll be sharing as far as like more of a screen share or anything. But so you can see just on the on page 2, the memo sort of highlights some of the things I guess I mentioned already, some of the large projects we've done the past several years as far as the treatment plants. Now going into the water tower, and as well as the rehab of the Sunnyfield water tower. You can see there at the bottom of page 4, the tiered water rates as well as the base charge have been adjusted by 4% the last few years. Based on those improvements are proposed to be adjusted 4% again for 2021. Just scroll to page 4. This is more of our, what we just use as a planning model. It looks back several years for actual totals and then goes forward a few years for the water fund there, sort of broken down into the operations portion as well as then on the first couple pages, and then the capital activities on the next couple pages. You can see there on page 4 our water sales, on that line there has been increasing each year, obviously, as we add new connections to the system, and we've had our incremental rate adjustments. The water revenue has increased, but in turn, you can see as far as when you go down to the operating expenses section, you can see the with having the water treatment plant and some of the other activities, on board, you can see the increase in some of the personnel services, et cetera. Some of those line items there based on providing that additional line of service.
Hey, Brian, this is Shannon. I have a question. Can I ask it?
Yeah, that's
on.
Yep.
On page 4, line 15, where it talks about depreciation, could you explain depreciation as an operating expense and also as that relates to cash? Because
yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, that probably could be more in the capital section, the depreciation. That's a good point. But as far as cash, it's a non-cash item, so it's added back in. I mean, it's taken off as an expense, but it's added back into when we do the actual projected cash flow. Seeing it is more of just obviously depreciating our capital assets. It's not an actual cash outlay.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was just questioning whether it belonged there.
Okay. Yeah, it maybe should be reclassified into the capital section. It probably should be. As far as, like you said, it comes back out as a add back to it's a non-cash item, but no, I think your point is well taken. I could move that for future iterations of this.
Okay, and the other question while we're on that page is under I guess line 4 and 5, where it says trunk charges and connection charges. There aren't any. Those appear somewhere else, but why do those line items stay here on this part of the report? I guess it threw me off when I first saw it. I thought, oh, well, I know we have trunk charges and connection charges. Where are they?
Yeah, it's more of just a format of how the spreadsheet it all ties together, but I could end up hiding those rows or taking those out. But yeah, they show up later, like you stated, when we get to more of the capital type activities. But yeah, I see your point. I could get those to not show either. Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, no, good question.
Brian,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yep.
This is Mike Mauler. Along those lines, on page 6, where we actually do see the trunk charge come in, on line 4 on page 6, why is 2020's budget blank for that?
I believe the reason we
also.
Yeah, and I think we when we did the 2020 budget, I think we didn't envision any developments at the time. I think when I talked to David, having any trunk charges coming in at the time we did the 2020 budget, so that's why we left that blank. I'm trying to see if I scroll ahead to the year-to-date activity. I thought we trying to see if we had any actually come in, but that was the rationale behind that. I think it looks like
Okay.
we've had about 41,000. It looks like come in year to date. I can't remember what development right off the top of my head. If David was here, he probably would tell us right away. But that's why I think we weren't sure any were going to come in for 2020. And they have actually been pretty steady with some of the Woodland Cove, phases and stuff. But I think we just weren't envisioning any when we put the budget together.
Okay. Just for future reference, I think if it's a zero budget item, it would be helpful to have the actual zero there. That way I know it's zero and it wasn't an oversight.
Sure. No, that's a good point. Yep. Okay. Yeah, and feel free as council is doing, definitely ask questions as we sort of go through. I'm totally fine with that. I don't really have a set PowerPoint presentation or anything. I'm going through. Obviously, I'm just working off these documents, so I appreciate the questions and comments. I don't know if anyone has any other questions on page 4. As far as it's the operating revenues, expenditures. And then when you go into on page 5, it's more just a subtotal of the operations activity. And then maybe what I'll do is actually jump ahead to page 8, because that's where the capital activities, and these are the ones that Mr. Peters has helped budget for our capital plan going forward. Or obviously he has a big say in these. So you can see on page 8 we have the items that are highlighted are the ones that have been either changed or added or for 2021 and beyond. You can see as far as the for the water tower in the southern system, all I've done there is more broken up when I think the expenditures are going to come in from the cash flow, as far as, because the project's going to finish in 2021. Either way, it's going to be about $2.5 million when the project's all said and done. So you'll see that there on page 8. Otherwise, you can see that there's been some water meter replacements. That's been in some of our meter reading equipment that's getting towards the end of the system. So that's been budgeted for there at the top of page 8 or middle of page 8 there. We've also budgeted from we know some of these street project areas are going to have water main associated or with them potentially, or some water improvements. So we've put some dollars in every other year for that. Otherwise, if you keep scrolling down that list, there's a couple other things that have been added. Or one of the line pipe tracer has been moved from 2020 to 2021. So some other generators that are on there in future years. So I don't know if anyone has maybe any questions on those capital items before. Otherwise, I'll go back to pages 6 and 7 as those populate those pages.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, I guess going back to page 6, and I'll start at the top there. So this is where you'll see the trunk charges and the connection charges coming in at the towards the top of the page that was referenced already. You can see our connection charges have came in, especially for 2018 and 2019, really well over the last couple of years. 297,000 and 375. The budget for 2020 was 225. I bumped that up to 300,000 for 2021. Based on that, we've, I guess, hit almost 300,000 the one year of 18, and then over 300,000 in 19, and we seem to be at a pretty good pace for 2020.
Brian, do you know where we're at right now for 2020?
Yeah, let me go. I think it'll be on that page 11 or 12. I gotta scroll ahead. Yeah, okay, so if you go to page 12, we are at 291,000 for 2020. So we are obviously going to go over 300,000 for 2020, based on the number of connections we've had so far this year.
Okay.
Which it'll be interesting. I mean, right, we still the building activity is still strong. I never know if that'll ever change or level off a little bit. I think the low interest rates of the current economic conditions has really helped. So yeah, that will obviously keep updating that each year based on the trends we're seeing. I don't know if anyone has any other questions on the revenues. Otherwise, I'll probably talk a little bit about a lot of the red numbers you see. It's not to scare anybody. It's more, that's just more our just a show that it's a expenditure, and that's our debt associated with a lot of these different projects. Our annual principal and interest. So you can see those listed there for the water main, the water tower, the PFA loans, etc. So those are all calculated into the spreadsheets there. And then you can also see the capital outlay items, line 38 there. That's where that's where those items tie in from that page 8 that I was referencing earlier. You can see how those pull right from there. So those are budgeted items are accounted for there to get into all the capital and debt activity. So if you, I guess maybe just move on to page 7. I can try to summarize. That's basically the total water fund ending projected cash balance. So you can see from 2020 to 2021, once the water tower project and the Sunnyfield rehab is done, it's projected to be at 600,000. That could hopefully be a little higher than that, maybe 700, 800,000 if our connections keep coming in better than budgeted for our water connection charges. But then that's what we plan to do when we spent down, instead of bonding for the $2.5 million on the water project, we did $2 million. So to try to spend down some of our fund balance. So that was a planned spend down. So, and then obviously, some of those, out years we'll have to look at as they get a little closer as far as based on, our water revenues there. If anyone has any other questions on the water fund. The other thing I was gonna mention is back on page 4, I think we should hit our water sales, our utility revenues projections there. I know if you go to page, I know I'm bouncing back between pages, but I'm gonna go to page 11, or probably, sorry, page 12 again. You can see our year-to-date water sales are about 561,000. You can see that line item's 900,000. Then the water meters are added into that too to make the 940. But the third quarter is always our highest quarter, and that's the one that just was billed here at the end of the month. So once we get those dollars in, we should end up hitting our projection as far as water sales, or maybe even slightly higher. So I wanted to at least mention that on the water fund there for the revenues.
Hey, Brian,
So
this
Brian,
is Shannon.
Excuse me, just
Go
a minute.
ahead.
Brian, when you do your projections for water sales, how many gallons per household do you per day or whatever? How do you calculate that into the projections for the new homes? So we have 100 new homes every year, approximately. They use X number of gallons, and you have to somehow factor that in. Is that in your rate growth, or where is that projected?
Yeah, so that's taken into account the as far as there's the rates inflation, and then there's the just the sort of the general revenue growth there. So it's not an exact science as far as that, but it's just trying to use previous years usage and trying to factor in, if you get 100 new homes and they use an average of X amount of gallons per year, it's to try to capture that. Basically it's a formula I try to play with to get that as close as possible each year. So
right. So when you do your projections and when you make your recommendation for increased water rates, then do you calculate in that not only are the homes from last year coming online, but new homes are also going to be coming in throughout the year?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So
Okay.
and obviously a lot of it depends on how. I mean, if you even look at on page 4 there, the last 3 years it's been 800, 8,000, 824, 828, and I think last couple of years it seems like they've been a little wetter than usual. So that's where even though it looks like we're bumping it up a decent amount, I think this is going to be a more standard year 2020 as far as what we're seeing as usage and people irrigation, using their irrigation systems, etc. there. So, but yeah, all that's factored in to try to hit some of those projections going forward of 940,000, a million, 1,056,000, to try to capture that. So.
Okay. All right. Shannon, you had a question?
Yes, Brian, along those same lines, if you look on page 10, the first line, water sales, the 2019 actuals were actually 50 grand lower than the 2018 actuals. And I remember when I looked at the water projections in the comp plan that there seemed to be a trend of water conservation. And I just want to make sure that we're factoring that in as well. And I guess I was going to ask you if you know off the top of your head why that 2019 actual number was lower than the 2018 actual number, when we actually had more people and more houses and I'm just curious why that was. Was it just attributable to weather?
Yeah, you probably, it's weather and probably, there is conservation. Obviously, the we do encourage people to conserve water, in odd, even, days as far as watering, and or just to be cognizant of their usage or whatever, no matter how they look at it. So I think, without remembering exactly, I think 19 might have been a little wetter than 18 as far as why our revenue was a little less in 19 than 18. Yeah, people, there could have been a little more conservation or whatever, or conservation. But yeah, it's a lot harder to budget for than like the next couple ones we'll talk about, the sewer and stormwater, because there's the variability factor of the usage.
Yeah, it's just a hard thing to predict. I know.
Yep. So yeah, so that's where it's hard to almost just say, if you add X amount of homes and, our revenue is going to go up by that much, because existing users can modify their behavior and be like, oh, the rates have had to trend up to keep up with the infrastructure improvements. So, maybe at some point, but when they see their bill are like, gosh, I'm going to try to use 4% less water because I'm getting billed 4% more. And, so then obviously their bill is roughly, the same from year to year.
Right.
I'm probably not that exact a science, but they probably, at least are more cognizant of maybe a water, a little less often or than I'm used to, or based on that. So yeah, it just gets to be a fine balancing act between, yeah, all those items.
Yeah, a lot of variables. Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, Brian, anything else?
Yeah, otherwise, just the last documents that were attached are, which we've already touched on, partially. It's just more the detail on page 10 and 11 is more just the projected 2021 budget, more showing all the different detail line items that fold into the financial planning, and showing sort of the same cash balance projection there at the bottom of page 11. And then yeah, it's like, as we've talked about a couple of times already, page 12 is the year to date, showing where our revenue is at right now. We're at about 80% overall, and which is a little different, because some of that is our bond proceeds, or a line item of that's the bond proceeds, which we've received in full from our bonding earlier in the year. But I think we will hit our revenue projections there, as I referenced earlier. And then page 13 and 14 are the year-to-date expenditures, which are tracking good. The water salaries at the top of, the bottom of page 13 are tracking. It seems like we've had a lot of water, our public works guys are, spend a decent amount of time in water, obviously based on the water treatment plants and some of the other activities we got going on there. So that's probably going to go a little over potentially. And then overall, we'll see some more of the payments to our two vendors on the Phoenix and Osteo on our water tower project. So you'll see those, that right now it's at 41% of budget, but you'll see that really come up with some of these contractor payments over the next few months here. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions on the water activity, or I guess partially one of the reasons of doing this is the 4% rate increase for the utility rates seem palatable again for this year. It seems like doing it, the 4% over the several years was a lot better than trying to do a 10 or a 10, 15, 20% for 2, 3, 4 years or something to that effect. Just people, I think, would rather see it go up incrementally versus a large increase and then hold or something like that. So.
Council, any comments?
This is John
I'm
P.
fine with that.
I'm fine with the 4%. I feel all along we deliberately underbonded to use reserves, and I think, at least in my mind, those reserves had this next year's 4% kind of factored in, at least in my mind, it was factored in. And looking at these projections, we're drawing it down to just over 500,000. So I think we're, at least from my perspective, we're where we were wanting to go. So I'm fine with this.
Okay. All right. Mike, did you want to?
So I just mentioned I'm fine with. I agree with what John said.
Okay. And Shannon?
I'm fine with the 4% this year. If growth and water revenues are strong in the future, the 4% annual increase needs to be evaluated and brought in line with the need for it or the lack thereof in the future. So I guess the only thing I question is where it says for the foreseeable future. I think I'm okay with 4% this year, but I think we need to evaluate it every year.
And as we do with our budget discussions every year too. So, Pam?
I'm comfortable with 4%, and we do always look at the future years in the budgeting process. So I think it's a good way to work it.
All right. Okay, Brian. Moving on to, let's see, sewer.
Yep. All right. Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So this starts on page 15 of the packet. Similar type of documents included. Start with the memo there that basically gives the current cash balance there in the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, it talks about that the quarterly rate for your residential properties is the $103 a quarter, and staff would recommend keeping it at the 103 for 2021. One thing I'd like to always just make sure we point out each year is the Mces charge that we get from Met Council. It's for this year, it is it's increasing by about $1,500. So the total for 2021 is projected to be $336,172. So you'll see that there.
That's not the increase. That's the total.
That's the total annual amount. Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. 15. Yeah. So last year it was 334,000 or whatever. This year it's for 2021. The amount they've given us is a little over 336,000.
Okay. All right.
Yep. So I guess, yeah, if we go ahead to page 16 there, you'll see the same, the several year trend there. You can see our revenue's gone, and been increasing with the number of, connections going up each year. So with our, for 2019, our revenue was about 890,000 there. For the sewer revenue, you can see what's overshot our budget a little bit for 2020. As far as expenditures there, you can see the personnel services there, and some of it is the biggest, or that's the second biggest cost in the fund. You can see there line 28 is the sewer charges from the Met Council there. You can see the trend there as far as in the 336,000 that's plugged into 2021. You can see as it's basically the operations in the sewer fund seems to be strong. Well, maybe skip ahead to page 18 again, as far as showing the capital items that we've plugged into the budget. The biggest item there for 2021 is the reconstruction of lift station number 3 with the Minneapolis Avenue project. I think that had been on the books to be done in a future year, but now with the Minneapolis Avenue Street project being moved into 2021, that would make sense to do in 2021. So that's where you'll see that amount there. Some of the other items are the regular I&I, and then if we have any lift station repairs or pump replacements that's come up in a year, then we pull from those to budgeted dollars.
So the Minneapolis Avenue was actually budgeted for 2022 and moved to 2021 because of the roads then, right?
Correct. Yep. That was the rationale to not, yeah, obviously to do it when
Yep.
there's all the other activity there. Yes.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yep. So yeah. So Gary helped get that, yeah, plugged in there, or from discussions with him and the engineering firm, we moved that up. So that's will be should be on track to happen in 2021, so we can get those infrastructure improvements coordinated and done together. Otherwise, as far as page 17, you can see the sewer connections and fees, and there you can see it went from 97,000 in 2017, 115,000 2018, up to 2019, 156,000. Just didn't know if it'd be that high again in 2021, so I've sort of leveled that off there based on that. I guess if we look ahead to the year-to-date report on page.
Brian, this is Shannon.
Yep.
Brian, on page 17, is there a reason why we're not showing any connection fees, permit revenues for 2023?
Oh, page 17. Oh, no, that's, yeah, sure, that needs to be updated. Yeah, we should, yeah, we definitely would have some in 2023. So, no, that's, yeah, I think that just dropped off with the last year there, but that definitely should be, there will be obviously connection revenue in 2023.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I guess just a note that just because there's a zero there doesn't mean that it means that it's been looked at.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I think that was, yeah, that's just needed to be, I think when that column was added, I think that just got missed in that, added into the formula or whatever, so. Update that. Otherwise, I don't know, does anyone have any other questions as far as the sewer fund? I mean, like I said, even go ahead to page 19, we're projecting, I mean, our revenues versus expenditures, I think we're gonna do pretty good, even with that $200,000 budgeted expenditure for the Minneapolis Avenue lift station replacement there in lift station 3. You know, our cash balance is strong there, and I think we'll end up in that, you know, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 range again between 2020 and 2021. So I think yeah, as reiterating from earlier, I don't think there's any need to adjust the rate right now. The fund is, you know, doing well, so I guess I would recommend we leave that for now as is, and we have a good cash balance to draw from in case development would slow down or anything like that. So,
Brian, with the other than lift stations, we don't have any huge expenses in the sewer fund, do we?
Correct. As
I mean,
far
it's
as
lift stations.
That's be the biggest. I mean, it's lift stations. As far as that seems to be the biggest one. I guess I don't know if Gary would want to jump in and anything else. That's usually as far as what we'd have for our largest infrastructure type items that I'm aware of, I guess. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think we should keep an eye on it because it seems like that's a pretty healthy fund balance. So I don't know if, I mean, you know, I don't want to say lower the rates, but it seems like, you know, 1.4 million, especially when we don't have anything big, huge ticket items on the horizon. That seems a pretty healthy fund balance. Do we have any, I can't remember now, do we have any outstanding debt on the sewer that could potentially be paid off? I mean, is that an option?
We do, because we have some of the debt associated with, I think there was a couple projects. I think there was a 2012 project, as well as there's the sewer and water portion left of the Kings Point Road project. So, I mean, there would be areas we could potentially look at. I would just have to pull those exact numbers as far as what's water and what's sewer again. But I think that would be that'd be a potential option, I believe, and depending on if we're at the call date and everything like that. Or I guess the Kings Point Road one, I think, was callable at any time. So, but there is a potential potentially to do that if that's something the council would like to look at in the future.
Brian, if I may.
I think it might. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, Council, one thing that I was going to start talking to engineering about is our lift station control panels. We're having a harder and harder time trying to find parts as these starters go out. It's getting harder and harder to find parts for these panels because they are pushing, some are 30, some are 40, even 50 years old. So we're having a harder time finding parts for these. So we are going to have to start looking at replacing some of these control panels as the need arises. So somewhere I was going to kind of talk, I don't know what the price is. I've been told they're about $100,000 just to replace one panel. So we'll have to start plugging them in as we go here. But that's something that we're going to need to look at here in the next few years starting this year and starting the next couple of years, every other year, start looking at replacing some of these older control panels.
Right. Yeah. And we can do that. Even if we plug those numbers in, it seems like we still have a pretty healthy fund balance. So I think I'd like to just at least see what the numbers would look like if we paid off, see what it would, what we could pay off or and what the interest rates are on those. If they're really, really low interest rates, it may not make sense. But, if we at least look at it and consider it, might be an option.
That's something we definitely could do. So, yep.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have questions on sewer? All right. So we'll move on.
I just had one real quick on page 23, Brian, under other equipment. We're only at 2.6% of the budget. What is that? Is that still outstanding then? Are we going to use that, the balance?
I think some of that number is if you go back to page 18, I think it was the some of the amounts that were budgeted for the SCADA computer upgrade, as well as some potential if we ran into any lift station repairs or upgrades needed. So I think some of that we're going to be able to bank. I can't remember if maybe Gary could speak to what if the SCADA upgrade. Or I'm just trying to remember where we're at with that.
That was done this year, Brian. We've already updated that new computer since the Windows program was outdated, and so that's been updated. I think, if I remember right, Brian, wasn't that more for? I'm just trying to get back to it here. Was that used more for financing the equipment wise of for the motors and stuff like that if we need them for the lift station as we go? As a capital fund there, 580, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Yes,
be capital items. Yeah.
Brian?
Yeah.
Brian, this is Mike. Is there a possible misclass here? Because if you go 2 lines above it for 530, which is improvements, we had 0 budgeted, but we've got 50,000 year to date.
Yes, I think.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's what. Yeah, it looks like I just got to we're different 500 code there, whatever. So that looks like if you actually look at it and bring those numbers together, I think Councilmember Molitor is 100% right as far as
okay.
Yeah. So no, that's good question. And good point there. So yes.
Anybody else? All right.
Okay.
All right. Sewer.
Yes. If we want to move ahead to as long as everyone's okay with the sewer, and obviously we're not planning any increase there, so we'll move on to the storm surface water utility discussion. As far as that starts on page 24. So just some of the items highlighted in the memo. you can see that our current cash balance is about a little over 600,000 on paragraph 1 there. And that should say September 2020 is 617,682. And the draft leaves the stormwater utility fee unchanged from 2020 to 2021. So right now, the current fee is the $26 a quarter or $104 annually. And that's provided. I think we were able to, when it was down at, for a few years it was down at 9 and then 18, and now it's been in the mid 20s. It's been funding the activities there more adequately. And you'll see when we get to the trend information, you'll see where that change came into play. Paragraph 3 there talks about one of the items that came up at, I think it was the last council meeting, maybe a couple council meetings ago, was a potential purchase of a street sweeper. And I know Gary looked into and talked to at least to one vendor regarding what that would look like, and the estimate the vendor gave was just shy of 285,000. So I don't know if that's something that council still wants. So I didn't really plug that into any of the planning documents or financial documents based on that. I think the amount was a little higher than what we were expecting. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that at first blush or first thought. Based on the fact that I think our street sweeping service a year is about 27,000 a year now. So obviously I know there's some benefits to doing it ourselves versus contracting it out, but I don't know if anyone has any comments or if I should just move on to the documents right now, or.
This is Shannon. I agree. I think it would be a long time before we saw an ROI on that. So I'd recommend leaving it out.
This is Mike.
Yeah, you'd have to. Go ahead, Mike.
I just want to point out the payback, the ROI, before we get above 0 is about 9 years. Assuming 30,000 a year cost, which I think is going to be pretty conservative. I think it'd be higher than that. I would expect a street sweeper to last a lot longer than 9 years. So I think there's actually some potential there to take that in and do that, because you can pay this off in probably less than 9 years and have a machine for substantially longer periods of time than that.
John, did you want to say something?
My comment was I'm going to agree with Ms. Bruce to leave it out, but I wouldn't just throw it out and forget it entirely. I also agree with Mr. Molitor, although obviously we have maintenance costs on it. I would be, if I was going to buy into purchasing a machine of that caliber, I would certainly want to know if we can generate other income from it, not only offsetting what we're paying a third party right now, but can we also use it other than doing our own streets? But I think that's for future discussion.
Pam?
The other thing is the $284,000 or $5,000. That doesn't include the manual, the person having to operate, his cost. So it would be higher than that when you figure in the man
not
operating.
That's only true. That's only true if we actually hired somebody additional. I don't think we hired somebody additional for something that would happen, 2 or 3 times a year. I think that's
no, but you're taking. Yeah, that's true, Mike. I was just thinking though, even so, if you put somebody that's working now on something else, you're taking him off of what he's doing and putting him on the street sweeping. You know what I mean? You're just kind of shifting the personnel.
But then you have a savings of whatever you're taking him off of. So if you took him out of, water treatment, which is not appropriate here, but just using that from a budget perspective, you'd have a savings there. As long as you're not adding, an incremental body. I understand what you're saying, but as long as you're not adding an incremental body overall, you're not adding any personnel expense.
Okay. Well, I agree. I think it's something that we should just, table for now, but keep it in the back of our minds because, it really worked on other things that we've done like this. So.
Right. So one other cost to consider is actually the gas and the insurance and that kind of thing, which might be minimal, but still. But the other thing is maybe to consider it later on as we get closer to needing another public works person. Because right now, I think our public works people are pretty well tapped out. I mean, they're pretty busy all the time, doing things that they haven't done in the past that they're doing now. But eventually, we'll have to add another person. We're adding more infrastructure. We have more maintenance, so we'll have to do that. And maybe that would be the appropriate time to think about then buying another maybe piece of equipment. The only other thing I would say is I'd want to make sure that we have adequate storage space for this piece, since it's going to be sitting around for a while between uses. You don't want it sitting out in the elements. And then I think to John's point, could this be a piece of equipment that could be shared with other communities, like maybe Mound would rent it from us, or maybe St. Bonnie, something like that. So those are all things to consider.
Yeah.
All right.
And then maybe just, one last final comment on that would be, and it's the last sentence there of that paragraph. I did note that there's a potential for grants, but I don't know what percentage. I know, I think Mr. Peters, talked, when he was talking with the vendor a little bit, obviously the watershed district looks kindly on it, but I don't know how much that would be if they would open up their wallet for any grants or anything like that. So that would be probably, like you said, a discussion for another day, another time down the road that potentially could help offset a $284,000 roughly, item, but not known for sure by any means. So otherwise, they'll probably just jump into the documents as the other ones.
Brian, I just have a quick question. I'm assuming you're also tracking. So for instance, when we do these road projects, we are assessing 50% for storm sewer. And I'm just wondering, I'm assuming you're tracking when people pay that and it comes back into the coffers?
A lot of times that just goes right into the road maintenance or road project fund as far as that. I guess, whether we account for it any differently and send that any portion to the storm surface water fund, I guess would be something we could look at. But because I know the majority of the improvements are usually that are being assessed are obviously usually for the actual road project. But yeah, something definitely I could look at and work with other staff on as far as how we account for that.
Yeah, I just think that if we have expenses that we're using out of the storm sewer fund, and then we're also assessing a portion of that, anything that comes, well, and obviously it will eventually come back to the city, should go back into the appropriate funds.
Correct. Yeah, as far as that, and yeah, and it's a little different how we're doing it lately with the money going right back into the road maintenance fund versus having most of our projects previously had where the money we'd bond for it, and then the money would go back into the debt fund to help pay off the principal and interest on the bond or whatever. So yeah, as far as that, I can look at how we're accounting for that and see if we need to add in make any changes to the different fund budget documents. So
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else?
Otherwise, yeah, I guess as far as yeah, the trend information there on page 25, you can see we've ended up making some changes to the stormwater fee over the last several years. I think we've paused and held it flat now for a couple years, but once now that it's basically the revenue is more matching the expenditures there, as you can see on the top of or part of page 25 there, revenue's been in that low to mid $300,000 range, and so is our expenditures. You can see our cash balance has crept up from the $300,000 up to about $400,000 or $500,000 there. and which is probably a little better reserve to have when you look at our some of our expenditures and our budgeted projects we have coming up. Page 26, you can see we've incorporated our street sweeping project and some of the our contract there and some of the projected costs there. That's highlighted on page 26. Page 27 is the capital improvement plan for some of the different projects. I don't know if anyone has any questions there. You know, Mr. Peters probably could speak in further detail to that. You can see some of the highlights there. Some of the items are now being done as a joint project to sort of for economies of scale. We've got a portion there for future street projects, the stormwater sewer portions. I think that's sort of what the mayor was talking about there earlier, to sort of capture that expense or try to project that out over future years. Not sure if anyone has any questions on those couple pages.
This is Shannon. We talked about the street improvement projects for 2021, and Minneapolis is looking at there's a question about whether or not to do curb and gutter, the cement curb and gutter along Minneapolis Avenue. And I raised the question at our last meeting of possibly using storm surface water fund monies to do that. And I just raise it again here as a possibility because I know that's coming up on our agenda at 7 o'clock. So I'm just curious if other council members think that might be a viable source of revenue to get that done. And we can talk more about it at our council meeting, but I just wanted to raise that here.
Okay. Anybody have some thoughts?
This is Councilmember Molitor. I'd be in favor of that. That makes sense.
Okay. Yep. John or Pam?
Well, we have the money in this, in here, so it would make sense that if it can be done, it would be a good way to use it.
John T., I would agree. I don't know, and it probably doesn't apply here. I don't know if there was an agreement on concrete versus bituminous, but I think it's a good place to use the fund.
Yeah, my only question would be, would we have enough to do all 3 streets in bituminous? Because keep in mind, we have to do the initial outlay. And so we'd have to look at the cost of all 3. We're looking at Minneapolis Avenue, Loring, and possibly Stonebridge. And then obviously we're going to be assessing a portion of that, but that means those assessments may not come back to us for quite some time. So that would be my only concern. It's not a bad idea. It's just we'd have to look and see what the overall cost is going to be. And if it's more than this fund can manage, maybe we could take part of the money out of the fund. Just a few thoughts there.
No, and that probably is not a bad idea, because that's even something we've even modified street sweeping over the years. Some years, previous years we had done half to street and half to storm, and over time I think we've evolved, and now it all comes out of the stormwater surface water fund. So yeah, there's definitely a few different ways it probably could be looked at, as the mayor and other council members are saying.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Anything else?
Yeah, and I think the fund's doing. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just have a real quick question. For the Ox Yoke Circle project and the, I think it's the reditching of County Road 26 and North Branch Road, those fall in Pioneer Sarah Creek Watershed District, don't they?
26 and 26 and North Branch does. Which other in Ox?
And
yeah, both of them
Ox
do.
Yoke Circle. I'm just wondering. I mean, we have never, to my knowledge, in my time here, I don't think we've ever used any of anything from Pioneer Sarah Creek. Is this an opportunity to present to them to maybe get some funds from them?
That might be a John question.
This is John T.
Sorry, John.
Nope, that's okay. I've looked at them as well. I can say just from the 2 years that I've been on the commission, none of the projects that have been assisted with funding from Pioneer Sarah Creek, whether it's, and it's been all in the other cities like you alluded to, Pam, none of them have involved these types of projects. They're typically lake, stream related. So we'd have to I guess we'd have to be sure how we could document it, but certainly it could be, we could approach them.
Yeah. Well, I know they were looking at that manure, whatever, they were relocating manure thing, whatever. I mean, that kind of relates to this. So I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Nope, that's fine.
We can ask.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, anybody else? Otherwise, you're not proposing an increase for 2021, so that's good. Anything else, Brian?
No, I was going to say, unless the council has any other questions, I think, like as you stated, there's no increase being proposed. I think the fund, several years ago, it was in pretty rough shape, but after I think it's been right now it's sitting okay as far as pretty good as far as the fund balance in that $400,000 or $500,000 range, and we've got some things to look at as far as I think some good questions as far as some of the these future projects coming up and potentially tapping into some of these funds for the street projects. So I think we're at a good place to right now for 2021.
Great. All right, anything else?
Yeah, I have one question, Brian. On page 30, when we're looking at this year's results, if you look at the salaries line, we're running like 37% of budget. Why is that so off?
And maybe I can probably let Gary speak to it a little more. I think they just have had, the public works have spent, more time in other areas, water and sewer, and just haven't had as much time to dedicate to some of the in-house, stormwater, surface water projects that were projected. I don't know.
So it's just an allocation of time.
Yeah, Brian, I can attest that. Mike, we do our ditching now. We just actually started doing our projects here now. So most of the stuff during the summer is patching and that type of stuff, doing, everything else. We can pretty much do the ditch work here, till it freezes up. So now for the next, hopefully, knock on wood, doesn't snow the next month or so, we'll be doing ditch work and up on North Game Farm. So we'll be using up that money now here for the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that, we don't have anything else on our agenda, so we could be adjourned if there is a motion.
So moved. This is Pam.
All right. Pam has made that motion. Is there a second?
This is Shannon. I'll second.
Okay, and Shannon made that second. So all those in favor will signify with aye. How do you vote, Pam?
Aye.
And how do you vote, Shannon?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
And Mike?
Aye.
And I vote aye. I'm Lisa Whalen. So we are adjourned, and thanks a lot, Brian. Great job. Great job, Council. We'll see you. We'll talk to you.